But I'm glad to be here this morning with you to be able to share with you a few ideas to let you know a little bit about just a little bit about Notre Dame, but more so about what we do. And Notre Dame Seminary celebrated 100 years last year. We have 135 seminarians over at our seminary. Well, we do right now. It's move-in day for our new guys, so I'll find out how many actually do show up. Sometimes they do get cold feet and you have to start readjusting your numbers. Sometimes you get someone showing up and you're like, who are you? We didn't see you. So I thought I'd just come by today. Well, good. Well, we'll show you around and show you back out afterwards. And we'll find your vocation director. Go see Father Colin. But we have 135 seminarians, and that represents actually 22 dioceses and 3 religious communities. 2 of the dioceses, we have a scholarship program. We're very grateful for the generosity of people in the area, and we're able to put on scholarship 4 seminarians from the Archdiocese of Tororo in Uganda. So we bring them in, we take care of their education and room and board, and there's a lot of local people that do support them. They sort of have adopted families here and help them with incidentals and incidentals. You don't have to have just incidentals. And we also have seminarians from the Diocese of Yendi in Ghana. We were supposed to have 2 this year. However, thanks to our immigration services, one was denied, and the other one couldn't get an appointment in time. So we will pray for them. I told them, I said, look, just remember this about God. You are where you're supposed to be. If the Lord wanted you here, you'd be here. So trust in the Lord. We'll get you here next year. But we do have this wide representation, especially in the Gulf South area, that we go from San Angelo, Texas, all the way to Raleigh, and points in between. So we do have we're the second largest theologate in the United States. And so I think my predecessors, I've just been in there. I'm starting my 3rd year now. First year I had to drink from the fire hose. Second year I made everybody else drink from the fire hose. This year we'll just put fires out, I guess. We'll see what goes on with that. But we've slowly, throughout the years, have gained a number of seminarians to come to the South. I think we're just friendly down here. We have a nice mentality, and a mentality of being with the people and for the people. And so formation is important for us. And it's wonderful that the topic of that's what I also teach. So if I get boring or anything like that, at least we have something to look at. We'll keep you in this room at least, instead of letting your mind go elsewhere as to where you're going to go eat tonight somewhere or whatever. But with the topic of your conference, ask and you shall receive. It's wonderful, to be able to ask. See, we have a wonderful relationship with the Serra Club, with our local Serra Club. Once a month, the men come to the seminary early in the morning. We have morning prayer at 6:45 and then 7 o'clock Mass after that. They come once a month to join with the seminary community in prayer, to pray, to be able to have breakfast with them, to get to know them, and then they have their meeting afterwards. And so we have a wonderful relationship with our Serra Club, and they also know how to get really to the heart of things with the seminarians. They feed them. They come twice a year. We have a fish fry in the fall, and usually in the spring we have a crawfish boil. This past year the crawfish decided to be expensive, so we had a fish fry again. It was wonderful. But it's a wonderful relationship that we have, and we know the importance of the Serras. The prayer, asking. We don't realize, how important that is, that you are essentially sort of, think of it as the planters that go and till the soil. You're breaking open the soil in the hearts of those men that are waiting to hear that call. And then you let the Lord do the work, and sometimes you have to be that voice for them. So a man hears the call, he says yes, but I guess, ask you shall receive. Well, but what happens when we get vocation? What happens when we start receiving? And I thought it might be important for you to know, well, what is that process? What is that process to give you a priest. People think that, well, this is what you think priests were when they entered into the seminary. A beautiful, magnificent work already done. Michelangelo's Moses was so realistic, they said when they finished it, he had a hammer and hit it on the knee and just yelled out, "Speak," with a few expletives, "Speak." This is how sometimes we think our priests are when they entered seminary. Perfect, ready to go. And I think this is how seminarians think they are when they enter into seminary too. I don't know why I need formation. I guess I'm just here biding my time. Feed me and, don't give me too much work to do. But this is really what priests were like when they entered the seminary. A block of marble. And sometimes seminarians can be blockheads. But they're really good. They are. It's just with this block of marble. I use this as an image rather than clay. Clay is malleable. You can shape it. You can mold it. It's easy. This, you have to chisel. You have to hit. You have to strike. We don't strike them. And then you have to smooth things out at the end. When Michelangelo was asked about his sculptures and sculpturing, he said that the sculpture is already complete within the marble before he starts the work. It's already there. I just have to chisel away the superfluous material. And really, when a man comes to the seminary, that priest is already inside of him. That desire for priesthood to serve the people, it's already there. We just have to chisel it out of him. And very often, that man gets an image of priesthood before he goes in. And then he enters into seminary formation. I was a spiritual director before I was rector. I've been in seminary formation now, working in formation probably about 17 years. Part-time, most of that. Both pastor and going to the seminary and helping out. But for the last, now 8 years, full-time formation. And working with guys, they have that image of priesthood, and then it goes away. When they get in there, and they think, maybe I made a mistake. I said, that was no mistake. What the Lord showed you was the Moses. But then you're faced with the reality of the block, and you don't see that image. Because you're not the sculptor. You're not the origin of your formation. Everything that you will experience in seminary, the people you encounter, the moments you have, those are the sculptors. Those are the ones that will chisel and shape you and mold you into the priest that God is calling you to be. So don't try and do it yourself. Look in a mirror and try and do a self-portrait and see what happens. Some of us is going to look like we were on something while we were drawing this. So the same thing with someone, don't try and do this. You can't see yourself, you're not going to see it. Let us do that. And so seminary formation, what does it really look like? Well, let's look at John chapter 1, 35 through 39. It says, the next day, John was there again with two of his disciples. And as he watched Jesus walk by, he said, "Behold the Lamb of God." The two disciples heard what he said and followed Jesus. Jesus turned and saw them following him and said to them, "What are you looking for?" They said to him, "Rabbi," which translated means teacher, "where are you staying?" He said to them, "Come and you will see." So they went and saw where he was staying, and they stayed with him that day. That's the beginning of seminary formation right there. See, don't neglect your role as both a Serra Club member, but more importantly, as lay faithful. Oftentimes being that John the Baptist, the mouth that proclaims, "Behold." Because you never know when that man was praying about that vocation and needed a sign. It happens to us. When I was in high school, I didn't want to go be a priest, I was going to go be a lawyer. that I was going to go into politics. Because I thought that the people needed politicians that would work for them. Well, I got to think of a better role. But I was thinking about that I planned to go to Loyola Law School in New Orleans. I had everything filled out. A little old lady from my home parish talked to my grandmother. That's how it works. Grandparents are always to blame with us going into the seminary. But she said, Josh looks like a priest when he serves at Mass. And I've been praying about priesthood and orienting with the Lord and want somebody holier and better. I was eating supper at my grandmother's house. She lived across the street from us. I'd gone jogging the cane fields, came back. She came back from the Blue Hair Mass. That's the 4 o'clock Mass on Saturday. Oh no, sometimes the hair color is not correct. And she says, I was talking with Miss Vivian. You know what she said? I said, no. She says, you look like a priest when you serve at Mass. I said, oh, I didn't think anything of it until I went to sleep. And I was saying my prayers, and you hear that. And I go, oh, no, you made a mistake. Finally, the Lord gave me some few other signs. But it's that John the Baptist, someone who points that out, that affirms. So don't downplay your own role in vocation work. Not just praying, but speaking. Speaking it out, pointing it out. So what do the disciples do? They go. They go to the seminary. They go before the Lord. They think and say, well, what is this about? Let's hear the spiel he's got. What is this all about? And then they follow him. They enter this time of discipleship. To be a disciple, what does that mean? And then they end up afterwards being configured to Christ. And so really that became the basis of formation for seminary. See, the church sees that it's important to form seminarians. These are the major church documents concerned with seminary formation. 1965, really, that document, Optatum Totius, the Decree on Priestly Training. It's a Vatican II document. Notice that it says, the previous major universal church document in seminaries was the Council of Trent's Decree on Seminaries in 1563. Some things have changed by that time, like indoor plumbing. So some things had to change with regards to priestly formation. And so this really started to address it. Then we see a development of it, 1970. Sort of this ratio, the reason, the fundamental reason for formation, for the institution of the priesthood. So this scheme for priestly formation, the schema that's set up. And then they start with the programs for priestly formation. Let's come up with some sort of document and understanding and put something down. What's the process? So 1971 to 2005, you have 5 editions. Things change. It's a living document almost. We update it. And then Pope John Paul II gave us Pastores Dabo Vobis. I will give you shepherds. That really sort of gave another structure to formation, coming up with these pillars of formation, these ways to look at sort of individual components to formation. And then with Pope Francis, we had the Ratio Fundamentalis, the gift of priestly vocation in 2016, which was the basis of our new edition number 6 of the program for priestly formation in 2022 that we're implementing. And it's changed some things, and that's really what we're going by. So why this program for priestly formation, the 6th edition? Well, there's a few things that came up, and here's some of them would be the current climate that we're in. This new program for priestly formation, I'll call it PPF. It's a little easier to say to keep on program for priestly formation. It's like watching a Geico commercial or something like that, trying to get something out. But really, the new PPF is designed to meet the challenge of the times. Things are changing. Technology especially, and including the abuse scandals of the past and the lack of formation that some men experienced growing up, not priestly formation, just simple, basic formation in the house that they're missing out on. Saying we need to address this, to set them up for success and to serve the people well. And so then you had also the ratio that had come out and says, well, we need to be in line with this and really forming missionary disciples who are in love with the master, with the teacher, with the Lord. If there's a love for the Lord, then there's going to be a love for the people. How can we not? And so bringing that about, and then intellectual challenges. Men may have a diminished ability to desire that critical thinking and expression. A lot of times, just give me what I need to know. No, you're not a parrot. You're not just giving back things. You're not repeating. You're interiorizing and having to address and think critically. And we see really COVID had sort of messed up with things like that. So there's also new timetables. Let's look at this and how do we have a man progress through formation and this path to priestly formation. And so it moves from an outcome-based evaluative method to a benchmark method where what are the thresholds we want them to get to before they should move on to the next one. And so there's also concern with young priests leaving after just a few years of ordination. So the new PPF, we needed it. See, first we started off with pillars of priestly formation, the 4 pillars: human, spiritual, intellectual, and pastoral. And really we can use this for our own formation too, as Christians, as Catholics. That we are one person, but there are these components to our lives. And so John Paul II talked about these 4 pillars. But if you think about a pillar, you have 4 pillars. Think of 4 legs on a table. If you take one out, everything will slide right off. If you looked at my seminary desk, if I had one leg off, then chaos would ensue all over my office. But the thing about these pillars, if we use that image, is that they're individual. It's compartmentalized almost, and there can be a danger of compartmentalization. That we keep in our heads, well, now I'm going to do the human thing. Now I'm going to do the pastoral thing. But instead, with the new program for priestly formation, it's 4 dimensions. 4 dimensions of priestly formation. Still the same 4. Human, spiritual, intellectual, and pastoral. Still the 4. But we see that through this diagram that they interact with one another. I might be going to work out in the field at a soup kitchen. Well, that's pastoral, but I'm working with someone who's struggling maybe with issues from the past, maybe family issues, that's why they're on the street. Now you're seeing sort of the lack of human formation in someone, but then you're like, oh Lord, I don't know what to tell them. They are bringing some spiritual in there, and then remember what you learned in class. Let me throw this in from pastoral counseling. So you can see they all start to come together. There's a oneness. And so we looked at that and saying, well, it's not just pillars, it's dimensions. They interact with one another. And so we see that priestly formation is an integral journey with these 4 dimensions woven together really in such a way that while identified as distinct dimensions, they can be seen as an integrated journey of disciple called to the priesthood. The disciple called to the priesthood. That's from the program for priestly formation, number 11. Number 12 also states, the integrated journey of discipleship is aimed at conforming the heart to the heart of Christ. That's what the disciples did. So they're with him for 3 years, learning who Jesus was, sitting and listening and seeing and observing. So being thus conformed to Christ leads to the priest in that pastoral charity, which animates all aspects of life, the life of the priest. And so we have these different dimensions. We have human formation. So our guys would go up to Milwaukee and play a basketball tournament against 12 other seminaries up there. Our first year we went, we came in 12th. It was an abysmal showing. It was horrible. It was embarrassing. It was good for them to experience that, bad for me to experience that. We went this past year. They had 14 of them, 14 teams. This year we came in 4th. It was much better. It wasn't their human formation that helped them, don't worry. But their human formation helps them with good sportsmanship. After they bust the mess out of the guy and knock him on the ground, they at least pick him back up afterwards, which is good. But what is the human formation? That human dimension. It helps the seminarian to grow into mature, well-balanced men who are capable of relating to all different kinds of people. And they display good personal qualities such as compassion, sensitivity, patience, responsibility, time management, and organizational skills. that human part, really that's sort of the basic part. Grace builds on nature. And we always say, if you're going to be a slob as a seminarian, chances are you're going to be a slob as a priest. You're late for meetings as a seminarian, you're going to be late for mass as a priest. So oftentimes, it's trying to form that so that when they're finished seminary, the priest that they're going to be will look like Moses, not like the block of marble still. There's also that spiritual dimension, spiritual formation. So this guides the seminarian in cultivating a deep personal relationship with the Trinity, especially with our Lord, along with the Blessed Mother and the saints. That through a committed life of prayer and interpreting the movements of the Holy Spirit, which should guide his decisions, there is this relationship. And he comes to know his own identity through that. And so each seminarian has a spiritual director to help walk with him, that accompaniment. That's a major word in formation, is accompaniment. It's not just go do it, come back and report. This is we walk with you. And they want us to walk with them. They expect us to be at their social gatherings, at their games. It is certainly spiritual fatherhood. I would say, I feel like I'm the headmaster at an orphanage sometimes. And I'm the dad. Daddy, we need it. Dad, can we do this? Dad? Oh. So one of my guys says, Father Dad, can I'm like, oh, please don't do this to me. Because I might have to ground you later on. But that spiritual director, where you can share the heart. And what is the Lord saying to him in his discernment and in that vocation? Then there's also that intellectual formation, that dimension there. That the intellectual component, it involves studying philosophy, theology, scripture, other disciplines. Our seminarians, they're not guys that failed out in the world and was like, well, might as well just go join the seminary. I can't make it in college, let me go here. No. We always say, the church punishes competency, but incompetency punishes everybody. And so we do not want everyone to be, but there needs to be an intellectual formation. We don't want you going out there spouting the four persons of the Trinity. No. You need a brain in there. And sometimes you want to say, son, is there a brain between your ears? If I put a candle on this side and blow through your ear, is it going to blow it out? Because I wonder sometimes. That's more in the human formation realm rather than intellectual. Some of them are walking brain bags, but that compassion part is like, I'm glad you know how to do this, but do you know how to convey this to someone? But the intellectual part, it is about equipping them to preach the gospel, to communicate church teaching, handle on the truth of our faith, and to evangelize. They develop a love of learning and study with an ability to synthesize the knowledge and apply it to the pastoral and spiritual life. And then that pastoral life, that pastoral dimension, pastoral formation. Here, our guys in first year theology, they go to Costa Rica and they go work in the missions. They, as you can see, that's not just because they're from Louisiana, they don't have shoes on. But they've trekked through streams and rivers to get to these places in the mountains, to the villages out there, to go administer to the people. And that pastoral dimension, it helps the seminarian learn how to be shepherds of the heart of Jesus. We're not just forming priests, we're forming pastors. Priest is part of that. Pastor is being able to care for others, not just yourself. And so it's especially important to help them to understand compassion for all people, especially the most vulnerable, the broken, and the needy. Seminarians gain experience in pastoral work and ministry in different environments, such as parishes, hospitals, schools, soup kitchens, homeless shelters, and the homeless on the streets. That they're able to go to the peripheries, as Pope Francis asks, and be able to bring the Lord to them. And so we see these dimensions interacting. They're not just separated. Think of it like an ice cube tray. When they come in, they're like ice cube trays. We take that ice and we just start to let it melt together, to be one priest, one whole person to go out there. So in the past, with formation, now we have stages of formation. Used to be, you had college, seminary, and philosophy, pre-theology, and theology. Now, We have the propedeutic stage, the discipleship stage, the configuration stage, and the vocational synthesis stage. These 4 stages now with it. And so if we fly through this, as part of Paul said, the bird flying in and out, as we fly through this, the propedeutic stage is that first stage. If you think of monastic life or religious life, think of it as the time of their postulacy, or when they're just entering in as a novice. So they spend a year. This stage allows the seminarian to lay a foundation for a new way of life through prayer, study, fraternity, and appropriate docility of formation. It's weaning them off of the world and entering into a realm of encounter with Christ. So the focus is human and spiritual, not intellectual so much in that time, but those two. Because we're getting guys that are malformed, and especially with technology. It's like, another appendage on them, we have to cut their arm off. So we do a technology fast. That they fast from technology. Their phones, they keep their phones, but we make them wise phones. Sometimes we call them dumb phones, wise phones. They only use it to call, like what the phone is supposed to be for, and to text. But other apps, social media, away from all that. To immerse themselves in the life of formation. So it establishes a new foundation, this way of life for them, a focus on being human. Can you talk to someone? And a lot of times the ones that we get are older, so they do have some life experience, which sometimes is not necessarily a good thing. But they're introduced to the life of the church as a community. They live together, but not in the main community. They're separated from it. We don't want cynicism of the older seminarians to spoil them. It's like if they would tell them that Santa Claus doesn't exist when they're in 3rd grade. I might have just busted the bubble with some of you out there. So it's propedeutic. It's an introductory stage that focuses on significant times of prayer, trust, and fraternity. And it's a 12-month period. Then they move into this discipleship stage. So think of it as the disciples sitting amongst the feet of the master. There's a systematic and rigorous formation that has at its core the goal of growing in an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ through the life of meditation, contemplation, philosophical study, and the training of one's character in Christian virtue. So in a sense, we sort of focus at this stage, Christ the man. But a man with a purpose towards priesthood. But living out a virtuous life, understanding the world through philosophical abstract thought. And then we move into that configurative stage. This is that stage when they enter to theology. So the seminarian models his life on the self-donation, the self-gift of Jesus Christ, shepherd and servant. And as he prepares for more immediately for holy orders at this stage, this configuration demands that the seminarian enter profoundly into contemplation of the person of Jesus Christ, the beloved Son of the Father, sent as a shepherd of the people of God, and really Christ the high priest and victim. It will make that relationship with Christ more intimate and personal, and at the same time will lead to an awareness and an assumption of priestly identity. Who he is as a priest, so that he can go out and do as a priest. And then when they finish with that, they finish with us, they graduate. We're done with them. Diocese's problem. Not my monkey, not my circus. Not my seminarian, not my deacon. Not bishop's one. But hopefully they have Moses, or at least Moses without being polished yet. But this vocational synthesis stage, this is that formal seminary, the period where formal seminary formation has been completed. They've graduated, we are done. They are now in the parish as a cleric, as a deacon. And it's intended primarily as a time not for evaluation. We're not giving them tests, we're not having evaluations for them where they have to, sweat it out. No. But of integration. Taking what they've learned and putting it into practice. They're not giving practice homilies anymore. They're giving real homilies now. They're acting as that cleric. And it's transitioning into one's diocese or ecclesiastical entity in which the deacon now is preparing to serve. So he gradually realizes the responsibility for the care of souls while he resides full-time in a pastoral setting. Because we used to get the deacons back after their internship, and they were miserable coming back to the seminary. Oh my God, it was the worst thing you could imagine. Like, it's like, glad to have you back, like, it's like, what? We've enjoyed the parish. And it took an adjustment, and sometimes that sort of poisoned the joy that Cardinal Collins was talking about. Sometimes it poisons the joy in the seminary. And so you're like, it's trying to remind them, no, you're like the 72, you go out, you do some things, but you're not really ready yet. You still have some things to do. But with this vocational synthesis stage, preparing for priesthood, that focus on serving the people where they're going to be serving for the rest of their life. And at that point, really understanding who they are. So ultimately, with seminary formation, this whole quick process that we ran through, what is the goal that we're doing? Forming priests configured to the heart of Jesus, the Good Shepherd, one who lays down his life for his sheep. Now, I have that beautiful image up there. A classmate from seminary, Father Paul Hazing, who's rector of Kendrick Glenn Seminary. When we were in seminary, he gave a practice homily. I still remember the story. He grew up in Nebraska. He's one of these corn-fed boys. His dad had a farm. They raised cattle. And he told the story about him having to go find one of the calves that was missing in the wintertime, in snow, on acres of land. And he says he's cold, he's walking, he finally finds this calf in this ravine, and he picked this calf up, and he's carried it back. And he's thinking about veal, I think, at this time. You know, and he's like, he just wants to break this calf's neck. He spent hours trying to find it. He's cold, he's tired, and then he was warm and wept. He said he really wanted to kill this thing. But really, that's the image we have of the Good Shepherd here. It's sanitized. Jesus holding this nice, cute little lamb, all clean. Jesus is happy. He's getting ready to give it a kiss on the head. Instead, this is really what we're trying to form our men to be. A shepherd who is going to get muddy and messy. He doesn't mind going into the muck of people's lives, the muck of society, the difficulties of society. Why? To go and care for the sheep. Pope Francis always says, to smell like the sheep. It's getting dirty. Willing to go in, meet them where they are, and accompany them out. That's what it's about being a priest. And what we're trying to form, I know at Notre Dame, we're not trying to form princes. We're not trying to form those that live up in the castles in the valley below us where the people are. It's saying you are going to get, I'm not going to ask you to do something that I myself am not going to do. They've seen me unclog toilets and they're standing watching. Looks like the Louisiana Highway Department. One person working and everybody else watching. Why do you think our streets look the way they are in New Orleans? I'm from home at Thibodeau. I'm not a fan of driving in New Orleans. I have a Jeep, mainly so I can get through floods and potholes is what I have. But for them to be able to say, I don't mind getting my hands dirty too. But it takes time. And the ones that we have coming, I'll leave you with this image, and really it's an image for all of us. New Orleans, you may have seen, we have wonderful live oaks in New Orleans, but they don't start off, they aren't, as they are now, they're not, again, they're not the Moses as you see now. They started off as a sapling. When I was pastor at St. Anthony Bayou Black, a group was coming to sort of repopulate live oaks in southern Louisiana, and they said, Father, can we plant a couple of saplings? So I said, sure. Now I'm used to seeing live oaks that are planted up this big. It's like, that's how you start them off in your yard, it looks great. But they had them looking that big. The one on the left is what it was. So I said, let's find a couple of spots. One by the parking lot, great, it'll give some shade in probably 100 years. And then one in the middle of the field in the back, wide open field. I said, right in the middle, it'll look great when it gets older. So they did, they planted. And when I was out there when they planted that second one in the middle of the field, and on the right side you see that stake with those bindings around it. Well, they had staked it and they started tying some bindings. And it was very, very loose. I said, Y'all might want to make that a little tighter, because I said, it's in the middle of the field. I said, the wind's going to blow here. And I'll never forget, the man said, Father, no, that sapling needs to experience distress. That if those bindings are too tight, it's going to rely on that to keep it held up. You have to let it experience distress, so that way the roots grow downward, not outward. Because if it grows outward, in 10, 15 years, you might get a storm that comes through, and next thing you know, your tree is gone. It is uprooted. Or even 50 years, it will be uprooted. Said, but if you let it experience distress, the roots will grow deeply, and you have that oak for centuries. And really, that's something for our seminarians, because we don't have helicopter parents anymore. We have lawnmower parents. They mow everything down. Everybody just walks behind and there's no problems. Here is the same thing for us. That when we experience distress, we want the Lord just take it away. You know, with a bad thief on the cross. Take me down from the cross. Instead of, Lord, give me the strength to persevere through the difficulty. And it's what we try to do with our guys, saying, if you want to live out priesthood till you die, till you have to stay face up in that casket, then you need to sink your roots into Christ in those times of difficulty. Because then you end up living for centuries. And that's what priesthood is about, is being able not just to weather the storms that come in their lives, but to be able to let you hold on to them and not topple them over in those times of difficulty. And so this gives you maybe a little insight as to what goes on behind the doors of the seminary. When you pray them in, and we take hold of them, what goes on? It's not just they show up and they're ordained the next day. It's usually 6, 8, maybe 9 years of formation. Somebody says, oh, it could be a doctor. Well, we're doctors of the soul. Doctors have malpractice insurance. We don't. We answer directly for it. And so if you're interested in knowing maybe a little more about what goes on behind the doors, we'll give you an example of what goes on behind our doors. WLAE, the local public broadcasting, did a documentary for our centennial. Actually, it won first place in the Gabriel Awards for documentary. And if you go to our website, you can pull it up. You can pull it up there. You can see more about Notre Dame. We appreciate our local Serrans for their support. We appreciate your support too, because, you know, you never know when our guys are going to end up ministering to you or your family members in some way. So support your local seminaries. Support all seminaries if you can. But if you want to know more about Notre Dame, more about what it is to be formed as a priest, go to www.nds.edu, or even talk to some of our people outside. We have a table out there. They'll give you some information. One of our big things we're doing is focus on that spiritual, where we're giving them a newly renovated chapel. Beautiful chapel. It was beautiful to start off with, but this, I go in there now while they're working, I said, how can they not come and pray? We can draw them in. How can they not speak with the Lord? And so thank you for the prayers that you give, especially to the men discerning vocation, those that are in there. And of course, this means not a doggone thing. I just want to let you know. It doesn't mean a doggone thing. But thank you.